Hi, Brady here with a bite size. This one is on emotional trauma. And that is a term that many of you may not be very familiar with. And the reason that I'm doing this video today is because I am seeing more and more emotional trauma manifesting itself in people's everyday lives and across society. And it makes me wonder, do people actually even understand that they have been through emotional trauma? So if they are, if their symptoms are there, they may not realize that what they have been through is quite traumatic. I think people associate the word trauma with, there's surgery, trauma surgery, there's trauma doctors. I don't hear too many talking about emotional trauma, and yet I'm seeing loads of evidence of it. Okay, so what is emotional trauma? It's anything that you were through in your life at any point where you felt totally floored, totally overwhelmed, totally broken by it. And you were in survival mode to get through it. That can be anything. And that's an important point because people think it had to be a major event in your life to have traumatized you. And that isn't the case at all. Because I'm seeing people traumatized by breakup of relationships, by medical things that they've gone through, by careers going wrong on them, by lots of things. And what I'm seeing is that trauma has gone untreated for quite a while. And where they end up with me is when they've tried to let time heal their pain, which is what we all tell each other, time is a healer. And I absolutely agree that time is a healer. But I can also see there is so much that you can do for yourself if you've been through emotional trauma, to heal yourself and to learn lessons and to tool yourself up for change in your future. And that is the point of today's video. So think about, for me right now, think about the events that you have gone through in your life that you found really hard. Were there any, first of all? And if there were, did you deal with the emotional anguish that you had from that? Because what I find is people have emotional hurt from a lot of these big emotional traumatic events in their life. And what I see then is that hurt, if it is not healed and if it's not expressed, because remember, emotions must be expressed, because if you suppress your emotions, they will internalize some way. They'll either lodge themselves in your mind, and that's where you will have overthinking, anxiety and depression, perhaps at some point, or they will lodge themselves in your body and you will have disease or an illness. So they've got to come out some way. And what I'm seeing happening is I can see that people have been through trauma. I can see that it was hurtful. There's pain still there for them. There's anger that happened to them and that they had to go through that in life. And then there's bitterness at the end because the anger starts to reduce down to bitterness. And they start to lash out and do things around them that are kind of sabotaging themselves. Right? So I'm seeing that quite a bit, and I'm starting to see the void of healing. So many people do not realize that they can go through a healing project, almost a healing treatment for themselves after emotional hurt, turmoil, anger, and frustration. And here's what I would describe as an emotional healing therapy or a treatment. So after you've been through an emotional trauma and a little time has elapsed and you're able to reflect on it, it's very important to accept that that was a very traumatic thing in your life. And why was it so traumatic to you? Maybe you didn't expect that to ever happen to you. Maybe you think everybody else gets over it better than you did, whatever. But accept that that was very traumatic for you, okay? Because that's normal, all right? The next step is once you've accepted that that was a trauma in itself and that you had your hurt and your anger was valid. So validate that for yourself. Then move into the self-compassion piece, right? So it's kind of like accept it happened, realize why it happened, validate that for yourself, then move into compassion because you've been through hell of some sort and you've come out the other end. And even if you don't feel you're out the other end yet, lots of self-compassion has to happen there. I would say buckets of self-love have to be invested in that part of your healing journey. You have to give yourself a lot of space. You have to be very accepting of how you feel and where you are. And then after you do self-compassion, self-love, then you need to start working on sort of the positive thinking, your future plans, your big goals, and you get yourself back on sort of your targets, your goals, your big goals, back on the rails of focusing on making your life the best life for you ever. Now, what that'll all do for you is it'll tool you up so that you're more resilient. Because what I can tell you is even after massive trauma in your life, you will still have more change to deal with at some point. And if you deal with that trauma piece well, like I explained there, you do the acceptance, you do the validation, you do the emotional treatment plan that I talked about there, the self-compassion, the self-love, the acceptance, and then moving on to the big plans for yourself and let those big goals and plans drive you. Next time you meet change in your life, whether that's a personal, career, or an emotional thing, you will be so much better at dealing with that. That won't be trauma, because we will have a new level of resilience altogether. You'll have rebuilt yourself after the last trauma. So it's a very important thing for everybody to think about today, because so many people are not even aware that that's why they are having problems in their life, or they're causing problems in others' lives, or they're causing problems somewhere in life. And it could be down to the fact that they're still holding some anger, frustration, some bitterness from an emotional trauma that they've gone through. They've maybe never gone for therapy, never gone for counselling. Maybe they're not in tune with emotions and don't understand that if you don't control your emotions and you don't understand them, that they will control you and your life will be ruled by your emotional outbursts. So there's so much in this, and yet it's so valuable. So have a think about that for me. See, can you relate to anything that I was saying there? And if so, then I hope that this video will maybe start you on a journey of healing that you never got to yet. Because it'll be the most important journey you'll ever go on in your life. And for everybody in the world, I want us all to get better at talking about emotions, because every one of us are born with emotions. If we are suppressing them, we are all going to be in trouble. I am seeing so many people struggling with anxiety, depression, different types of illnesses, and yet they're not tooled emotionally. We're not teaching this in school very much. We're not teaching this anywhere, really. And yet every one of us is walking around. We have all of the emotions. We have a full suite in there. And nobody's teaching anybody how to use these. So try for me today, invest a little bit of time in thinking into yourself. Think about what I said earlier. Could you have been through a traumatic time, emotional traumatic time in your life at some point? And do you think you actually did some kind of a healing treatment plan for yourself, by yourself? And if you didn't, do it now. Start now. And remember that it's the acceptance, the validation, then the self-compassion is really, really important. Stop criticizing, stop giving out to yourself. I'm seeing so much negative self-talk. It's unreal. Self-compassion is very valuable. And then self-love comes in there. And then moving on from that, the plans, the big future that I want you thinking about for yourself, the big goals that I want you going for, that your focus starts to go there. That's it for today. If you think this would be of help to anybody else, please share. And I'll talk to you all soon.